Okay, I'd like to welcome you to this regularly scheduled City Council meeting. It's Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. It's 7:30 p.m., and I will hereby call this meeting to order. We are going to begin by rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to stay standing, and we're going to have our words of inspiration this evening from Pastor Traxel. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pastor Traxel?
As I pray, let's continue to remember Councilmember Bruce Anderson. Talked to his wife, he's doing much better. We're glad for that. So keep him in our prayers and thoughts. Let's pray together. Lord, we're so thankful today for your goodness and mercy to us. We want to thank you for this wonderful city that you've allowed us to live in and grow up in. We thank you for your blessings upon this wonderful city. Lord, as we stand this close to Thanksgiving, we as Americans want to thank you for a wonderful country, what you've blessed us with and what you've given to us. We pray that you would help us to continue to love one another and treat each other as you treated us and you gave yourself away for us. Help us to love our brothers and sisters the way you loved us. Lord, we ask today that you would bless this council meeting today. I pray that you touch our mayor and our council members, that as they search for answers for our city, that they would find guidance in your presence and your help, that we might look to you for all that we do. Give us wisdom from heaven to make choices that we need to make for our families. We ask you to bless our first responders and those that put their lives on the line, that we might be able to sleep peacefully at night. Thank you for this wonderful city. This is a unique, wonderful place, and help us to treat one another fairly and with peace and kindness, as you have been so kind to us when we didn't deserve it. And we want to thank you for all things, and we pray for future blessings upon our children and the generations to come after us. We thank you and praise you for all things. We give you glory and the honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much. So as Pastor Traxel just mentioned, our beloved Councilmember Bruce Anderson suffered a little bit of a health issue, but as he said, his wife says he's doing well. I actually talked to him yesterday. He's doing well and hopes to be back with us soon. So if you are a believer in prayer, please just keep his family in your prayers as they just navigate this, and they're doing well, which is a really great thing to know. So we're going to go to a roll call, please.
Councilmember Anderson. Councilmember Binkowski.
Here.
Mayor Milan.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffitt.
Present.
Councilmember Shepard.
Here.
Thank you. We are here except for Councilmember Anderson, and I'm sure he's here in spirit. May we have an approval of our agenda?
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda for November 19th, 2024 as presented.
Support. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Binkowski.
Yes.
Mayor Milan.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffitt.
Yes.
Councilmember Shepard.
Yes.
Thank you. We have approved our agenda, and we will move to item number 6, which is public comment. During this public comment, anyone who would like to speak to any item that is currently on our agenda this evening may come to the podium. We'll allot you 3 minutes, and we just ask that you state your name and your address. Is there anyone wishing to speak?
My name's Ron McCauley, live at 1008 West Selfridge, Clawson, Michigan. I want to talk about, I believe it is D, under number 9, about the waiver to the city ordinances on housing. I went to the planning meeting last week, and they voted against not allowing that ordinance to be passed. And I hope the city does the same. And right now, that's all I have to say.
Well, we thank you for sharing your thoughts with us this evening. Is there anyone else?
Good evening, Cheryl Dry, 779 Elmsford, resided in the city for 26 years at that location. And I'm also here tonight to ask that the council follows the recommendation of the Planning Commission, which is to deny the request for a text amendment to the PUD ordinance. As it was stated in the Planning Commission's motion last Tuesday, the text amendment should be denied to protect the character of our neighborhoods. And there are already ordinances in place to address the development of single-family detached homes. To be clear, I am not speaking against the building of homes on the site. I fully understand that's what's happening, and everyone who I have spoken with absolutely wants single-family detached homes. There is no other acceptable option. However, what I want to ensure is that the new builds fit the surrounding community and that the property is not overdeveloped. There is already residential zoning in place for the Shalom property, so there is no need to change the text in the PUD ordinance, and there is no good reason for a PUD at this site. The PUD benefits that Robertson lists in their proposal are not any more beneficial to the community than if they build under the existing zoning regulations. And they do have another plan that would fit better within the neighborhood. So again, I just ask that you please put a priority on keeping the character of the neighborhood and follow the guidance of the Planning Commission to deny the text amendment request. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, Linda Hale, 940 West Selfridge. And I would like to reiterate what everybody's saying about the current plan for the building. And also I'd like to reiterate what the pastor said, that this is a very unique and wonderful city. And as such, we're a very sought-after community. And I believe that being such a sought-after community and having this area of land really valuable, that any builder that would come here would benefit by following our rules, and they don't have to get a PUD or a variance. And at this point, I would just hope that they would make housing that would fit into our community, that would look like the rest of the houses around our neighboring community. We want houses that are single-family homes and also no alleyways, and to have them have a little space between them so that you don't hear when your neighbor flushes the toilet. You know, there's all kinds of reasons, and right now, I don't see that. And this builder also, when they proposed this to the city, we had a community meeting, and the school board said this builder is very, cooperative and likes to hear input from the city. Well, we gave them our input, and our input at the time said, we're concerned right now. We're concerned about alleyways. We don't want them in our city. They ignored that. We said, it seems overdeveloped. We'd like to have some property, some land. And instead, what they proposed that night was totally different from the last proposal. They slipped in more homes. So if they're not listening to us, why should we trust that even if you gave them a PUD, they're not going to follow our ordinances, and they're going to do what they want. And that's what they've proved already. So I would like to see them build. I would love to see families moved in, but I want it to look like our small town with a big heart. We don't want it to look like something that's off of Normandy Road. And that's where it belongs, off of Normandy Road. They didn't put that housing project in the middle of a community. They put it off of Normandy or off of a main road. That's where this project belongs, not in the middle of our neighborhood. Thanks.
Thank you.
I agree with everything. Oh, I'm Judy Klein, and I live at 825 Elmsford. I'm the one with the big tree that the builder has said he would save it and give me a little bit more land so they don't have to cut down my beautiful, huge tree that has almost all of its leaves still. But because my land or my yard is shorter than everybody else's, they were going to put 3 houses on facing Selfridge. And those are the 3 houses that I think are unnecessary. I think if they eliminated the alleys and just had one street going through, and then 3 streets coming off of that street, and then built the lots like that, that it would be a lot. I think I saw something that looked something like that online or whatever. But I haven't been following it all because I thought it was inevitable, and I thought I had no voice. So, in any case, I really believe that Normandy Oaks is beautiful. I walk there all the time, but they don't back up to little ranch houses like we have. And it just doesn't fit. And that's all I can say.
Okay, thank you. And your voice is always important here. Anybody else?
My name is Ginny Sham, and this is my leader dog, Karma. We live at 1046 West Selfridge Boulevard. I think all of the comments that were made last meeting ought to be simply retaped into this meeting so that you can know all of the story. I think that this still, like all the other residents in the city, should be part of the park. But since that doesn't seem to be what is happening on either the school board or the city council, we're stuck with having houses there instead. If we're going to have a house there, it needs to look decent, it needs to follow our codes and not be changed just because some company from who knows where wants to come in and do their own thing. I'm from an educating family. Paul August Sham was my uncle. Every single person in the Clawson Public Schools should know that alleys across the street from a football field are teenage trouble waiting to happen. We do not want that in our community. We also want our roads fixed by the demolition team and whatever construction team comes in here, and we not spend one dime of our bond issue repair money. Thank you. Please make this part of the park.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susan Watts. I'm at 927 North Selfridge. I've lived across from Shalom for 30 years and have enjoyed Clawson as my home. I had attended the meeting last week for the Planning Commission, and I voiced the same concerns that I'll just address a few of them here that I had an issue with. It's a prime piece of property, and I don't understand why it's not being sold to the city. That's another issue that I would like to have answered. But the attitude that I was perceiving is that Robertson Homes is going to come in and they want 45 houses, and they've been asking for variance upon variance upon variance. Not only are they wanting 45 houses there, we have 8, including, you know, the triple lot on Selfridge to the corner of between Elmsford and Elmwood. Now that's directly across from me, and they want to put 11. Not including the gal on the corner at Elmsford and Selfridge, 11 houses. They kept asking for variances, and one that I'm extremely against is they were asking for a variance in height. They need that variance in height. They want that variance in height because they can then turn what is supposedly attic space to 2 dormers, technically making 4 or 5, 3 and 4 bedroom homes into 5 and 6 bedroom homes. So they can, as long as there's windows on the sides. And then they're asking for parking variations. They're asking for street parking. So many things that they're asking, and they're asking us also to amend our ordinances here in the city. And I think running this as an HOA there's no HOA in Clawson, and I think every person that lives in Clawson should live by the same rules, not just some little city on the hill, city within a city. I think the layout is way too much. If you look at it, I mean, the maximum that they could probably fit in, that should fit in that area, would be 32 homes, based on if you took two streets like Elmsford and Stephen, or Highland and Baker, and such. You look at that whole lot of land, and 32 would fit. The size of the homes are very tall and skinny. They'll block out the sun for the people on Elmsford. And I really don't think that the overall appeal is, and layout, including the alleys. I don't think Clawson has ever dealt with alleyways before, and I don't know how that would affect the aesthetics to come drive down Selfridge and into our wonderful central part of the city and see two alleyways with garbage cans, variants for the vehicles. And especially if they keep getting these variances for height. You're talking about parking problems. And already we have parking problems around the school. When there's things going on at the park and ball games and whatnot, everything just fills up, especially now that Shawm is gone, there's no overflow. So the heart of the gem of the city is Clawson. Personally, I would like to see break some up, put in a few houses, a couple of streets of houses to get the tax revenue. But I would like to see, again, like I told them, they said they'd bring this information to you, a recreational center. There's my son who's grown up here, there's no more ballparks. Basketball courts is what I'm saying. There's no basketball courts. We need a rec center for the kids. For the last 30 years, when I moved here in 1994, a millage for the school hadn't been passed in 30 years. We passed it, and we've been passing every single thing that has been coming across to make our city great as it is. And I think that by selling off that whole amount to squeeze in that many homes, if they're going to be homes, I really wish that there would have been a little bit more talk about what was going to be done with the Shawm property once everything relocated to the main high school area and we built all that addition. I think that there's issues not only with what I have mentioned, but also drainage issues. Selfridge floods right there all the time. And I have a problem with runoff. There's no green space hardly on any of what they have proposed. I understand the first proposal offered 2 drainage retention ponds, and now the one that they're proposing only has 1. And I'm concerned about runoff. There's no green, nothing green to absorb the rain, and it is horrific, the amount of water that's over there. And the storm of 2014, I can show you, it was completely flooded all the way across the playground area in the back. And it's that I'm concerned about, and they can't guarantee that it's going to, help any, or hurt maybe, but I would think that 45 new homes is going to make a big difference, and as far as the runoff also. Getting back to what because I don't want to get up here and complain without having some kind of solution, I want to get back to having the idea of the city being able to have first dibs on the land and not necessarily develop it into houses or split it off and do a couple streets of houses. But we do need a rec center, because in a couple more years, don't come to us and say we need to update the Hunter Center. that's not worth it. It doesn't serve the community. I think that a rec center, as well as it's large enough of land to do these feasibly, and have a conference banquet, rooms that you can rent out. I grew up in Huntington Woods, and you go to the rec center there, and it's beautiful. They use it for a lot of different things. They rent that out. That's a cost, to people, but it's a gain to the city. So, I really hope you really look at this, in a way from the perspective of the people that live around there. And I will tell you that I have not received adequate, transparent information from this company regarding anything that's been done at Shalom. Not one time have I received anything in my mailbox. I don't think the transparency is there. And I'd really like to see that. See if there's anything else that I'm might be missing, but at the last, I just don't think that we should rush to judgment and let a company come in and steamroll what should be discussed a little bit further. And I hope that there's, going to be no decision tonight, so that there can be more information getting out to the people, because I haven't gotten it. And I have lived there 30 years. So I think that's a little sneaky of a thing to do. And also, I do want to make a note at the last, at the meeting last week, I was a little, I know you're going to weigh heavily the decision of the Planning Commission, and I really hope that you do, because I was a little put off by the president and another board member of the school that got up to speak, that one said, well, you should have realized when y'all voted for, this whole shebang up at the high school and condensing all the schools. And when really there was nothing to this enormity that was even, brought up as what the property should be, what's going to happen to Shalom. All we just knew is it was going to be knocked down, and then that was it. And then they decide. But I really don't think that we should be changing an ordinance for one company. That's going to open up a whole new can of worms for a lot of other properties and people. And then they're gone. They'll build, and then they're gone. And I really would like to see a no vote on them wanting us to change our ordinance amendment.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else?
Hello, good evening. My name is Timothy Quinn. I reside at 656 Selfridge Boulevard. I appreciate all the comments that I've heard tonight, as a lot of the same people were here for the Planning Commission meeting and expressed the same sentiment, as do I. I hope that the council listens to what the Planning Commission voted on, and I think they had the best interests of the citizens when they voted the PUD request down. I have some reservations about it. I understand the developer wants to come in and max out as many houses as he can, profit in his pocket. I understand that, but I took a drive over to the development over at Normandy Oaks Golf Course. And after driving through that neighborhood, I was very concerned, specifically because of the size of the lots, how close in proximity the buildings were. And if that's something that they were planning on doing over at the Shalom development, I'd be very concerned, because it just doesn't fit in. I feel that any developer that comes in should assimilate to the existing area. So those are my main concerns. One thing that came up at the Planning Commission meeting, and I believe it was the president of the school board mentioned that they don't even have a written agreement with this developer. A lot of us were already led to believe that that was a done deal. So I'm a little surprised at that. Maybe I'm wrong, but if there isn't a signed agreement yet, does that open up to other possibilities that we can use that property for? So, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you as always. I'm Nate Hara, 413 Park. As always, thank you for your service and prayers to the entire family taking care of Mr. Anderson. I would echo everything that's been said. Just one additional thing, I also have concerns about all of the specifics that were mentioned, the alleyway, the density, the height, the nature of an HOA, the likelihood that these things are going to add to lasting peace, harmony, and prosperity, and just a general tranquility in the community. I have concerns about these things, but these could be worked out. The bigger issue is the PUD portion of it. This proposed text language basically transforms the PUD from addressing commercial interests, commercial properties, and now, of course, includes the single-family home and residential side of it. I think 10 years ago, nobody knew what a PUD was. But it probably had a place if you were doing a drastic reconstruction of an area downtown, if you wanted to change all of a corner from being restaurants and a post office to being a casino or a hospital. I can imagine scenarios where such a drastic change to the property just isn't conducive to following all of our ordinances. But traditionally, for single-family homes, for truly residential areas, it seemed like our ordinances and ZBA, Planning Commission, working together with our existing laws, added a lot of value add and didn't put so much pressure on the council. If it does so happen that you do use this process, PUD, to develop residential properties, I just hope you understand how much of the Planning Commission's resources and insight, ZBA's resources and insight and experience may be lost, and it will all be on your shoulders, and I do trust you. I just think that this is happening very quickly, and that's to some individuals' advantage, and perhaps to the residents as well, if everybody has good intentions and wisdom. So thank you so much. Again, thank you for your service.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once? You all look comfortable? Stay there. We'll move on. Thank you very much for those who spoke tonight. We'll move on to item number 7, which is proclamations and presentations. Our first presentation will be by Clausen Goodfellow, Patrick McNulty. He's going to give us some news on something that's coming up that's great. Right, Patrick?
Yes, good evening, thank you. So I am here on behalf of the fire department and the Clausen Goodfellows to formally request permission to do our annual paper sale. This will be Sunday, December 1st from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at all the major intersections in Clausen.
Is it always on a Sunday, or is it usually a Saturday? It's usually Saturday.
I've heard a couple different things, but I think we pushed it due to Thanksgiving weekend.
Okay. So you said Sunday, December 1st, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m.?
Correct.
Okay. Anything else anyone needs to know? Tell them what you do with the Goodfellows donations that you receive.
Yep, so what we do,
Please.
all the proceeds that we get, the initiative goes to No Child Without a Christmas or any families in need for the holiday season. So it's something, to my knowledge, we've done for longer that I've been a part of the department. So I'm really happy to be able to help out and just formally requesting permission to do so.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion for that? Okay.
Internally, we approve it.
We all approve it, right? Let's everyone give them a thumbs up, because who would not
Just gave
approve
it to
that? And if you're here today, make sure you go there, one of those intersections on Sunday, and give them a donation. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Do you mind my asking, what intersections will they be at?
all the major ones. So we have 14 in Maine, 14 in Rochester, 14 in Crooks, and then Maple and Livernois, and Maple and Crooks.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Glenn, we've done that together.
Yes, we have.
It's so much fun. Like, we'll tell you, it's one of my husband's favorite things that go on here. He is a fireman for a day, that day. He loves it.
For good weather.
Yeah, we are, yes, all of us are, because we're coming, right? Okay, thank you so much. Next up, we have Shar is here this evening. Shar Larson from the Clawson Chamber of Commerce, and she has an announcement for us.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to address you for a couple of reasons, and one is I've been in the city for 25 years and been a volunteer on the Chamber of Commerce. My first day at the Clawson Community Credit Union, they told me I was going to be on the board at the Chamber of Commerce. I love the city. I love the Chamber of Commerce. But there comes a time when every organization needs people to make changes. And I've decided after a lot of years, and people not always wanting to do certain roles, that I have found someone who wants to be the president. So as of the first of the year, I am stepping down, but I'm not going away. You're going to be stuck with me. I will come to meetings. I will come in the office, but I might sleep in a little bit and then come. And I might stay till 6 or 7 to get the work done, but it will be on my time. My granddaughter will be going away to college, and she'll be out of state. And I want the opportunity to travel a little bit and see her. And I want to spend at least a month home, which is in the Copper Country in the UP, Keweenaw Peninsula. I'm getting old, and I want to make the best of that time. I will Zoom in if it's a board meeting, but I will be around. You're not going to get rid of me. But I am so grateful that Alex stepped up at our last meeting, and he is willing to do it. He's going to work with me, and we finally have a paid employee after how many months? And so things are moving along, and it's a great time to bring somebody in, new ideas, working together, doing so much more for the community. And I'd just like to introduce you to Alec. He is a Clawson resident, and he works in Clawson. So I'm going to let him say a few words. And we have a lot of things going on, because now we'll have more people.
Hello. Thank you for having me, I guess, today. Thank you, Shar, for always being so amazing. I look forward to the next couple of months of learning all of the tricks of the trade and being more involved in the city. So anything I can do to get involved in the city is awesome to me, because I love this city. So thank you.
Well, Alec, you and your wife have been very present part of the activities in the community for quite a while. I know you recently joined the Lions Club, and you're part of the chamber, and you show up at activities, and you don't just show up, you are a great volunteer, so thank you for doing that. And we look forward to seeing what you can bring to the chamber moving forward, too. A lot of great things happening in Clawson, so proud to see. And Shar, thank you. You know, we all love you. Now we're going to do a little bit more work. We're going to move to item 8, which is consideration of approving the following consent agenda. We have item A, which is minutes of the regular city council meeting held on Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. And we have item B, a list of bills in the amount of $3,022,10.58. It's kind of late for dollar numbers for me.
So moved.
Support. Thank you.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
Councilmember Binkowski.
Yes.
Thank you. We've approved our consent agenda, and we'll move on to item 9. Under 9A, we have the fiscal year 2023-24 financial audit presented by Yo and Yo CPAs and business consultants, and we have Mike here to give us our reports. Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Again, I'm Mike Rolka, principal at Yo and Yo CPAs. Can you guys hear me all right? Yeah, okay. So I'm here to present the 2024 audit results. I'd like to remind you that is July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2024.
Excuse me, Mayor. I think
Oh, I'm
we're having
sorry.
a
You wanted to say
technical-
something, didn't you?
He did a fine job introducing himself, but we're having a technical issue that we're working through right now.
You want me to hold?
I think, Nick, how much time you need?
10 seconds.
10 seconds.
Start counting, everyone.
That would have been a great introduction.
It was great.
10-second countdown, you know?
Well, Mr. Raker, I think you should give your little intro here because there's some pretty good news in there you might want to share. I kind of upstaged him because I saw Mike and Mike is ready to go, and I was like, let's do this. And I
We're
totally
very
cut him out.
forward-leaning this year, ma'am. So, thank you, ma'am. Yo and Yo CPAs and business consultants have completed the audit for fiscal year 23-24. The audit has been provided for your review. For your awareness, last year the audit was before you on February 6th, 2024. It is before the council today, nearly 3 months sooner than last year. Mike Roca of Yo and Yo will be present to provide a presentation and any answers to your questions.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, with that, one thing I do want to say, it was submitted on time last year. The presentation was just a little bit delayed. I think I had a conflict in January. If we could move to the audit opinion, please. So the audit opinion is the bottom line of an audit, and it's really what you're paying us for is our opinion on the financial statements. And so with that, we have issued what is called an unmodified opinion, meaning that it is materially correct and it may be relied upon by outside parties. Excuse me. With that, there's a few things that go into that. So what is management's responsibility for the financial statements? Well, management is required to prepare them and present them fairly, and that includes having a set of internal controls that would prevent or detect and correct timely fraud, errors, omissions, so that none of that's in there. Our responsibilities are to perform risk assessment, develop auditing procedures, conduct those procedures, and then form our opinion. Once again, the opinion is what you want to hear every time you have an audit, an unmodified opinion, equivalent to an A+ on a report card. Next few slides, I'd like to go over just a very high level what some of the numbers were. And again, I like to remind you, this is as of June 30, 2024, so a little bit back, and certainly some of the numbers would have changed from now. Looking at this first slide, you'll see a trend line from the past 5 years of the governmental funds, revenues, expenses, and fund balances. What you'll notice this year is that the expenditures appear to be much, much higher than the revenues were. Well, that is really something I'd like to point out, because included in those expenses is $5.5 million for the debt refunding to refund the 2014 refunding bond and the 2014 park improvement bond. Not included in this is other financing sources, which is where the proceeds went for the new bond. So once you net that into it, it really was an increase to fund balance of about $500,000, and they just about offset one another. So don't get too worried about seeing that column there is what I'd like to point out. This pie chart on the following slide breaks down the revenues as a percentage, which was very consistent year over year. Probably no surprise to anybody here. The biggest portion is property taxes at just now exceeding $10 million and 63% of the total revenues. There's a small portion of federal grants, and then the next largest portion really is the state shared revenues and Act 51 funds. The next slide presents the expenditures for 2024 in the governmental funds. And here's where you'll see that big portion of the debt service coming through to refund those bonds. A bond refunding is akin to refinancing your home loan. You essentially take out a new loan, pay off the old loan to get different interest rates. Some of the other things I'd like to point out on this slide is that the percentages, if you were to pull out that bond refunding, would be fairly consistent year over year. And this year, the general government line there is up a bit because unallocated fringe benefits are now placed there rather than posted to the varying departments. The next slide is a 5-year trend of fund balances. A few things I'd like to point out as you look at 2024's. The green amount is assigned, and that is about $600,000 for capital projects. That represents amounts that were transferred from the general fund into the capital projects fund for future capital use. The orange portion there, which represents about half of it, $3.1 million, is unassigned fund balance in the general fund. That represents 37% of annual expenses, which is a great place to be from a fund balance perspective. Means you have enough money to cover you, when things aren't always going the way you want them to go. Lastly, that blue portion there is about $4 million in total, and those are your restricted fund balances. Those are amounts that the board cannot determine what they'll be spent on. It's outside sources that restrict those funds, and that's what those revenue sources are. So most of that, or over half of it, is for roads from your Act 51 funding, and then the next largest two sections are amounts restricted for debt service and capital projects. Moving on to the enterprise funds, you see a 5-year trend here. There's just a couple of things I'd like to point out. You see the blue and red bar columns there are just about equal, which means that the rates are supporting the operating expenses as that's what you're looking for with your enterprise funds. Make sure your water and sewer rates are in line with the cost to provide those services. And then the gold bar across the top, a slight increase this year, and that represents your net investment in capital assets, meaning that you're investing in your systems at a greater rate than you're depreciating those assets. And so that's also indicative of good things. With the financial statements, we always provide what we call the governance letter, which is important information that I'm required to share with you all at City Council. And I'd like to go over some of the key highlights of that now. First of all, I'd like to point out some of the significant estimates that are used in the financial statements. And also, I'd like to make a note on that. Sometimes people get scared when I say there's estimates in the statements, but you could never prepare a set of financial statements without some estimation. So the key estimates in these financial statements are the useful lives of capital assets. So that is, how long will you depreciate an asset when you buy something new? So say you buy a new vehicle. Do you think 5 years? Do you think 7 years? The net pension and liability or asset and the net OPEB liabilities. The key estimates that go into those are mortality assumptions, interest rate assumptions, discount rates, healthcare cost trends. So there's a lot of assumptions that go into those liabilities and assets. And those are developed and measured by the actuaries. And then there's an estimation for administrative charges that the general fund charges out to other funds. I'd like to talk quickly about a couple accounting standards, 3 accounting standards rather, that'll be upcoming. Next year, there's 2 new standards, one on compensated absences. It's a new reporting model on how to report that, unifies it. I don't expect it to be a major impact here at the city. There's a new standard on risk disclosures when a certain event has happened and what management's response to that event is. One good example for that would be if you were to have a large taxpayer go bankrupt, as an example, and maybe it was 25% of your tax revenues. How is the city going to respond to that? So it would have to be significant for it to be something you'd actually disclose. And then GASB Statement 103, that's coming up 2 years out from now, and that is the new reporting model, and it really emphasizes some changes in the management's discussion and analysis to really analyze the numbers more than just say what the changes were year over year, as well as some changes to the budgetary schedules. I have a couple of other communications in that letter. We did pass on some potential audit adjustments. There were 3 that we passed on. One, similar to prior years, we did not record the leased assets and liabilities, basically as a cost-benefit situation. The smart credit revenues were recorded in 2024 of $125,000 rather than in 2025 because they were not received within 60 days, so it's really a timing issue. Those funds have been received, just not within 60 days of year end, so we passed on that and put those revenues in 2024. And then the miscellaneous revenues, miscellaneous receivables listing was $15,000 different than what was recorded in the trial balance. And I believe Mark wanted to investigate that variance further rather than just adjust to it. And so I believe that will be investigated in fiscal '25. On the next slide, my favorite thing, I have no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies identified this year. It went very, very well. Kudos to Mark and his team, especially Mark. He did a fantastic job. He was very well prepared. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Well, you must have done a great job because we don't have any questions. You and Mark have done a great job, so thank you very much.
It was Mark. Mark did a fantastic job. I want you guys to know that. He was very well prepared, and you see me standing here earlier than ever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks for your assistance.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we need a motion to receive and file. I move to receive and file the financial audit for July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Shepherd?
Yes.
Councilmember Binkowski?
Yes.
Mayor Milan?
Yes.
Pro Tem Moffett?
Yes.
Thank you. We shall receive and file our audit for July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. Moving on to item 9B, we have consideration of the first quarter budget amendment for fiscal year 2024 and 2025.
Can we get a motion?
Yeah, I move that the first quarter of budget amendments effective September 30th, 2024 for fiscal year 2024 through 2025 be approved as presented.
Mr. Raker?
Need support?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, support.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Per the Uniform Budgeting and Accounting Act, PA 2 of 1968, 141.437, Section 17, Number 1, except as otherwise provided in Section 19, a deviation from the original General Appropriations Act shall not be made without amending the General Appropriations Act, subject to Section 16, parentheses 2. The legislative body of the local unit shall amend the General Appropriations Act as soon as it becomes apparent that a deviation from the original General Appropriation Act is necessary and the amount of the deviation can be determined. An amendment shall indicate each intended alteration in the purpose of each appropriation item affected by the amendment. A summary of the budget amendments is as follows. In the general fund, the net impact of the budget amendments will change the original budget deficit of $338,120 to an amended budget surplus of $341,880. In the Major Street Fund, the net impact of the budget amendments will change the original budget deficit of $195,930 to an amended budget deficit of $390,730. In the Local Street Fund, the net impact of the budget amendments will change the original budget deficit of $17,050 to an amended budget deficit of $140,050. ARPA funds. The budget amendment shows the obligation of police wages of $680,000 to meet the federal requirement. This will obligate all remaining funds by December 31st of this year. Debt fund. The net impact of the budget amendment will decrease the reserve in the debt fund by $13,000. Debt fund sidewalks. The net impact of the budget amendment will decrease the reserve in the fund by $4,000. Capital projects fund. The net impact of the budget amendments will increase the original budget deficit of $200,000 to an amended budget deficit of $577,750. Water and sewer fund. The net impact of the budget amendments will increase the original budget deficit from $1,231,340 to an amended budget deficit of $1,393,187. In the motor equipment fund, the net impact of the budget amendments will have zero impact on the budget surplus. All other funds have been reviewed for the first quarter and do not need amendments at this time. Finance Director Mark Pollock is present for discussion.
Okay. Mark?
I'm happy to introduce myself and say absolutely nothing if you don't have any questions, but if you have questions, I'm happy to address those.
Would you please just explain the ARPA fund portion?
Sure.
There we go, okay. This was at recommendation. We recently were made aware that they want funds obligated by the end of this calendar year. So we had roughly $680,000 left. What this amendment does, and that's, I asked Mike from Yo to stay around just in case there were additional questions that I couldn't answer, but the obligation of the funds, this is an acceptable use. We can use police wages. What this does do is it still leaves all the time you want as a council to, we move the money from the general fund, it's still available for expenditure, but the obligation commitment is now taken care of with this amendment. But you still have the ability to decide how you want to expend that $680,000. This takes care of the obligation of the funds, which is an acceptable use for police wages.
Because we were given a timeline when we were given the funds that they had to be obligated, assigned to something within that time. But there's no problem. We're not saying we're spending $680,000 on our police funding. We're saying we're putting money there and we can put it on whatever we want later on because we can move it. Is that correct?
Yes. It can be utilized for all, I think Mr. Rakers laid out possible options for the funds. Those are still all on the table with the balance of funds, so.
Okay, thank you.
No. If you recall, in the past 2 years, I provided memos explaining the spirit of how we could spend money in some, a portion, about half of it was spent regarding safety, efficiency, meeting requirements. I can provide those two memos if you'd like.
That's fine. And because we still would love to do some like special things with them that we wouldn't normally do, right? And perhaps assign some to all various departments so they get like a boost that they wouldn't normally have. That's still on the table, right?
Doing this gives you the time and flexibility to have those discussions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bankowski?
One of the sentences in here says there are other budget amendment requests are for adjustments to administrative internal service charges for the bond funds and to reduce the motor pool charges for administrative charges in major and local streets. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, it's part of what Michael mentioned as part of our significant estimates. We estimate the amount of money that other departments utilize. Like, for example, in the water and sewer fund, we have people assigned in our DPW, but Joe, myself, even council spends time on, but it's other employees that aren't designated in that department. That's an administrative charge. And what I'm going to do for him this year is I used to have a breakdown of the percentages very well thought out and I think accepted by our previous auditors. I think Michael will be confident that what we're doing now is acceptable. The other thing is the motor pool charges. Part of the issue we had last year is we had a what's the term? Deficit. I can never remember.
Deficit elimination plan?
Yeah, well, we had to do a deficit elimination plan because of the balance remaining in the fund. That's been addressed this year. If the state requires us to do an update on our corrective action plan, we will, but that has been addressed with additional charges for the motor pool for the same type of purpose, where we have other people. We have 2 people assigned in our motor pool that work on our vehicles, but we have a lot of other people that contribute time toward the motor pool. So that's part of those amendments. One was overestimated, so I'm adjusting that down, and there were a couple others that were underestimated. So the net effect is for the motor pool is pretty much break even. And I think we mentioned that as a 0 impact on the actual budget.
Thank you.
Okay.
So my question is, just for everybody's edification here, we see deficit, 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 deficit. Can you explain to us why we should not be worried about that?
Yeah, the deficits are expending reserves. So we have an annual deficit budgeted, but we have healthy reserves in all of our funds.
So it gets balanced out somewhere else in the budget, is what you're saying? Okay.
We're taking the money we have on reserve in all of our funds that have a deficit budgeted, and we're expending those reserves, which is fiscally responsible. So we're taking, Council a couple years ago transferred $2.5 million in fund balance reserve to a capital projects fund, which has been mostly spent on kind of our skin in the game on road and infrastructure. So it would be, this year, again, we had a surplus. We had some projects planned that we've carried over. That's part of the budget amendments, as well as projects that we've carried forward because we hadn't expended them last year. But the reality is a deficit for the year is because we have healthy reserves to spend.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Thank you, Mark, for your time and for
Thank you.
being fiscally responsible with our funds. And thank you, Mike, for your assistance. with
And
our
I
questions.
appreciate all of his kind words. It is truly a team effort. Chris, who lives in Texas, who still does our reconciliation, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention her. So she does a great job. And then we work well, treasurer's office, clerk's office. We all work well together.
Great, thank you. And it shows, right? Okay, a roll call, please.
Councilmember Binkowski,
Yes.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
Thank you. We have just approved first quarter budget amendments effective 9/30/2024 for fiscal year 24-25 as just discussed. We'll move on to the next item, which is item 9C. Number 9C is a public hearing and solicitation of public comments and consideration on the 2025 program year community development block grant application.
I move the 2025 Community Development Block Grant application be approved and submitted to the Oakland County Community and Home Improvement Division as recommended by the administration.
Support.
Nick?
Thank you, Mayor. The Community Development Block Grant is a grant funded through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, to keep communities sound, attractive, and economically viable. The City of Clawson is a subrecipient of Oakland County who administers the grant to a majority of municipalities in Oakland County. The program strengthens neighborhoods by supporting local revitalization, home improvement, and public services for senior citizens, low-income persons and families, disadvantaged youth, and disabled residents throughout most of Oakland County. The county requires all participating communities to attend a yearly CDBG workshop, which was held on September 27th, 2024 this year. For program year 2025, the City of Clawson has been instructed to use $33,688 as our planning allocation for the upcoming projects. As part of the program, we are required to utilize a minimum of $3,500 for public services. Historically, the city has dedicated that funding for Haven via a county-executed and administered contract. Haven provides services for domestic violence victims. It is recommended to continue funding this program as they continue to serve Clawson residents. The projected leftover allocation of our total grant would be $30,188. After consultation with the DPW Engineering Department, we are recommending that this funding be allocated toward a street improvement project on South Washington Avenue off of 14 Mile near the Clawson Manor. This project proposes to replace the existing roadway along 14 Mile, extending 120 linear feet southward from the crosswalk. This would also include the repair of 2 catch basins. Once this item has been presented, a public hearing shall be opened by the mayor. More than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Then you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I just, the photograph from the designated areas was a little confusing to me. Can you broaden as far as where that exactly is? And I believe there's also a crosswalk in that area, or is that impacted at all?
So the proposed location is right directly south of the crosswalk, so where the curb cut is, where the approach would be on the crosswalk, south 120 feet to basically where the drive approach is to the parking lot of Clawson Manor. So that comes out to be at about 120 feet of roadway that'd be replaced.
Okay. But the island itself that's not impacted? Okay.
No. This is essentially what a miscellaneous concrete project would look like, but we're just able to utilize CDBG funding for it.
Okay.
Any other council questions? Well, then I will hereby open the public hearing for the 2025 Program Year Community Development Block Grant application. Anyone in the public interested in speaking on this topic? Okay, then I will close the public hearing, and we will move on to a vote. Mr. Smith?
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Binkowski,
Yes.
Thank you. We have just approved our 2025 Community Development Block Grant application, and it will be submitted to Oakland County. Moving on to item 9D, we have consideration of the reading of an ordinance to amend the City of Clawson Code of Ordinances, Chapter 34, Article 10, Section 2.2, Section 34-3.1, to permit detached single-family uses in planned unit developments.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the first reading of the
Could I
proposed amendment.
please just finish the, just give me
Madam Mayor,
1
I
second?
move to approve the first reading of the proposed amendment to the City of Clawson Code of Ordinances, Chapter 34, Article X, Section 2.2, Section 34-3.1, to permit detached single-family uses in planned unit developments.
I'm going to finish my sentence just because it's what I'm supposed to do. So going back, we're going to section 34-3.1 to permit detached single-family uses in planned unit development. Text amendment application from Robertson Brothers Homes.
So moved to approve.
Was there a second? Okay, there's no second. Nick, would you like to? Well, there's no second. We're not
fails.
moving on.
The item fails.
The item fails.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That item did not pass, so we are not approving anything, and we will move on to
His
the next
motion was to
item.
approve. There needs to be a motion to deny, right? Point of order. Is there a need to have a motion to deny if the motion in the affirmative failed?
We wouldn't go. There's no second, there's no motion on the table, there's nothing to vote on. No, I don't think we would.
Okay, thank
We
you.
wouldn't, by Robert's Rules of Order, we wouldn't go and create a motion in the negative. That would make no sense.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 9E, we have consideration of the first reading of an ordinance to amend the Clawson Code of Ordinances to permit and provide standards for short-term rentals.
I move to approve/deny the first reading of an ordinance to amend the Clawson Code of Ordinance, Chapter 34, Article X, Section 2.2, Section 34-3.1, and Section 4.2 to permit and provide standards for short-term rentals.
Yeah, section
I think it's
4.52.
impossible to approve and deny the
I
ordinance.
was just reading it. That was a weird writing. That's right.
Mayor Pro Tem, you need to select one of the
Oh,
options. I
okay.
think they're offered in the
Gotcha.
alternative.
All right, so I'm going to select deny, so it's deny.
Of support.
Can we have discussion on this?
Do you have the, do you want to read the thing first? Or-
Yeah, I just didn't want to speak out of turn. So.
That, you may speak.
On August 7th, 2024, the City Council and Planning Commission held a joint meeting to discuss how the City of Clawson should govern short-term rentals. During that meeting, the City Council asked the Planning Commission to provide language that indicates where short-term rentals would be permitted to operate. After further discussion, the Planning Commission determined that the B3 General Business, BRD2 Business Renewal District, and I1 Limited Industrial would permit short-term rentals as special land uses. These districts were selected as they currently permit the use of hotels and motels, which Planning Commission determined to be a similar use as a short-term rental. The draft ordinance, as recommended by the Planning Commission, is provided for your consideration. Additionally, the Planning Commission also recommended that the short-term rental ordinance be amended to establish an annual cap of 10 licenses per year, and that the general ordinance be amended to require annual interior inspections of these units. Just for your awareness, there are currently 11 short-term rentals currently operating in Clawson. Of these currently operating, one would be conforming to the proposed ordinance, while the other short-term rentals operating would become non-conforming. We're happy to answer any questions.
So if they are non-conforming and we go to 10, the 11th would have to be determined? Or how would that be
I'll probably
determined
end
as
up
non-conforming?
deferring to Rennis, since the license has already been issued. As long as ownership or use does not change, they'd be able to maintain that as a short-term rental.
That's correct.
So that would essentially we couldn't have 12 or more. So if 2 people out of that 11 sold the home for a typical residential use, it could go up to 10, but we would never be able to go above 10.
Okay.
With that
So it could be
capital list.
any one of the current registered short-term rentals?
Correct.
Okay.
Sure.
Am I recognized?
You're hard to miss.
I'm opposing this, has nothing to do with Airbnbs. It's because of this letter that I received today, and it's absolutely right. It was from the Alex Haddad, who's the Director of Government Relations for the Greater Detroit Metropolitan Association of Realtors, and he says, quite correctly, when a home is sold, the seller of that property typically continues to live in the house after closing, while they wait for the closing of their new home or as they finish packing and moving. Under the ordinance as written, this would not be allowed without being a certified short-term rental. So when you go to sell your home and you say, oh, I'd like to stay in it for 2 or 3 more weeks, this would not be allowed. I am certain that getting in the way of the real estate transaction is not the intent of your ordinance. Many communities in Oakland County have created categorical exceptions to this type of situation from their short-term rental ordinances, and we implore you to do the same. Not creating an exemption could put in jeopardy the ability for the vast majority of homeowners to ever sell their properties and bring the Clawson real estate market to a halt. This is only one person's thing, but it sounds right to me. Is there any other opinions on it?
I agree with that, and I hadn't thought about that till we got the email, which he read, so we can talk about it. It's a valid point that a lot of times when people, sell their home and they can't, the new home's not ready or whatever, so they pay the new buyer to stay in the home for, I was just talking to a friend at work, and they're staying in their house for 3 months, so that flies in the face of this. There was also some other aspects of it that I thought were a little onerous, like the requirement of a parking space for each 3 people that are going to potentially be renting it. So I think that's a little over restrictive. And then the requirement for fencing on the yard, I didn't think was appropriate. So I think that I don't understand, why would you need a fenced yard? I think that I know that there's a lot of consternation about the short-term rentals, and I think it was that this is written a little overly onerously, so as to prohibit them from being put in place. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities to soften it and maybe get more of a balance between the concerns over, I know there's one particular place, it was a nuisance, but there was also some people that spoke when we had the town hall that were very responsible, short-term rental people, and so that's why I would personally be opposed to the way this is written.
And to piggyback on that, one of the large concerns that I had was the requirement of an annual interior inspection. If you're selling your home, I have, that opens the door to a Pandora's box that I just do not want to go down. So if we do come back and say, okay, let's find a common ground on this where we can move that everyone feels comfortable with, I would certainly not want to see that brought back. I think that's, talk about onerous, that's really onerous.
I would like to say something positive, and I do applaud the Planning Commission for setting limits for the areas that these would be acceptable, and that would be in the B3 General Business, BRD2 Business Renewal District, and L1, which is Limited Industrial. So I do think that was great. I think that alleviates some of the concerns that residents have had about having potential large numbers of transient people, next door to them. So I do think that was great.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback on that too. That you've given the PC a big task, and I know that's not one that you necessarily had asked for, but it's important and it's necessary, and we need to get it right. Just in the form that it is presented to us now, I think we can go back and rework some things. And I really appreciate every effort that you do in order to try and get this right.
Same. That's it on this topic. We'll move on. We didn't have, we do have a
There's a
vote. We do have a
motion.
vote, sorry.
The
Yeah,
motion
sorry.
was to deny it.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Councilmember Shepherd,
Yes.
Councilmember Binkowski,
Yes.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Mayor Milan.
Oh, yes.
So we'll take this back to the planning commission and discuss your comments with them and see what else they can come up with. Okay. So it'll be presented to you, however the schedules align.
Thank you, appreciate that. Okay, moving on to item 9F, we have consideration of a joint meeting with the Clawson Public Schools Board of Education.
I move to approve the joint meeting to be set with the Clawson Public Schools Board of Education for Monday, January 13th, 2025 at 7 p.m. at the High School Media Center.
Support.
I hate doing things on the 13th. Go ahead.
Any comments?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Last year, a joint meeting between the Clawson City Council and the Clawson Public Schools Board of Education was successfully held on Monday, January 8th, 2024. The joint task force between the city and the district met on October 29th of this year and agreed to propose to their respective elected bodies a joint meeting to be conducted on Monday, January 13th, 2025 at 7 p.m. in the High School Media Center.
Mr. Frankowski?
Can I ask what the agenda or purpose of this meeting is?
Well, I mean, it's to continue fostering our collaborative and cooperative and communicative relationship, but probably specifically two things that we'll discuss is likely a school resource officer and potentially a joint signage on Main Street.
Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Binkowski,
No.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
Thank you. We will have that joint meeting on January 13th with the school district Board of Education. Thank you. Moving ahead, we have do we have any unfinished business? Good answer. How about let's go to item 11, which is public comments for items not on the agenda. If you're here this evening and would like to speak to something that we have not already discussed that wasn't on our agenda, we welcome you to the podium. We'll give you 3 minutes. We ask you to state your name and address. Mr. McCauley, I think you should just join us up here.
Ron McCauley, 1008 West Selfridge, Clawson, Michigan. I got three things. One is, are you still pouring cement in Clawson?
Yes.
For projects?
Yes, sir. Pardon me, Mayor. I'm sorry, Mayor. I was a little aggressive there.
No, that's okay. I prefer you answer anyways.
Well, I'm wondering because at the corner where Linda Hale lives, there's a sidewalk that comes to the street and doesn't have that excess cutout curve for wheelchairs and strollers. I'm wondering if that's on the agenda for this year, if you're still pouring cement. DPW is probably going to have to work it. Just wondering if you're still going to do that this year. I want to see you in compliance, And I see all these women with strollers trying to get their strollers over the curb. So anyway, how about, has any sites been determined for the marijuana shops in Clawson? Has anybody, they proposed any yet?
We're not supposed to go back and forth with dialogue, but someone can get back with you on that topic. Or maybe our city attorney can address that during his comments. So, he'll, if possible.
And at the last planning meeting, there was a group there that wanted to know, is there a possibility that Clawson can put in a dog park?
That is something that sorry, I'm not supposed to talk again, so.
During council comments, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, we'll address that. We will address that later. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. McCauley. Anybody else? This is way harder than it looks, people, for someone like me. Okay, we'll close public comment, and then we'll move on to our city clerk's report. Mr. Smith, you want to give a city clerk's report for us?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. On behalf of the city clerk, I'd like to present a report on the November 5th election results. 77% of Clawson registered voters cast a ballot in the election. 3,597 residents voted on election day. 3,126 voted by absentee ballot, and 965 residents cast a ballot during the early voting process, or period October 26th, November 3rd. It was a peaceful process, and there were no issues reported. The clerk's office wishes to thank the poll workers who ensured that the election was a success and dedicated themselves to sustaining the backbone of democracy, our election process. We would also like to extend our thanks to the Clawson Department of Public Works for setting up our election equipment at the precincts, and to the police department for monitoring the precincts to ensure a safe environment for both poll workers and voters. Additionally, we are grateful to the police department's assistance in providing an escort to the city clerk at the end of the night to the county clerk's office. Finally, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the city clerk, Michelle Cuckoo. The election process is no small task, I can assure you that. And Michelle consistently demonstrates her unwavering dedication to the city of Clawson. Her hard work and commitment do not go unnoticed, and we are grateful for her efforts in ensuring the integrity and smooth operation of our elections. Nothing else, Mayor.
That was so generous and kind of you, and I'm sure she couldn't do it without you, so same to you. Thank you. How about our city attorney's report, Mr. Newshine?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. McCauley, for that perfect opening. Madam Mayor, as you may have noticed, obviously the charter amendment was approved by the voters. On prior occasion, this council had given me certain authority to go out there and seek out certain options with respect to the that particular charter amendment. It just so happened that obviously throughout the time prior to the vote in November, we had to be somewhat coy in talking about the issue, and very little was offered to you, if anything at all, really, on account of the fact that we didn't want to in any way, shape, or form, the administration cannot opine on any issue pending before the voters. However, fortuitously, and this is the only time you will ever hear me say this, we have been sued on the matter. And there will be, and the reason I say it's fortuitous because a judge of our circuit court will opine on the matter shortly. Jars Cannabis is the plaintiff on the matter, and they've sued the city of Clawson as well as the Clawson city clerk in her official capacity, obviously. And that matter I've responded to. Obviously, we received a complaint and summons. We responded to it. And the matter is pending before one of our judges in the circuit court. And we have a motion scheduled for December 4th where the judge will opine. If you recall, some communities already litigated this issue. And we have a Court of Appeals case that came down sometime in September, but with a appellate period that is attached to it. Obviously, we could not really rely on that reading until we knew where it would end. In that opinion, the Michigan Court of Appeals, in a situation, though procedurally somewhat different than the one that we find ourselves in, it commented largely on the issue of a charter amendment initiated by voters, such as happened here in the city of Clawson. And the ruling that the Michigan Court of Appeals had and passed on was rather broad, and I believe, my professional opinion is that it applies to the city of Clawson. And I believe, and we can never obviously predict what judges will do, but I believe that the court on December 4th on our case most likely would rule in similar fashion to where they ruled in that case, which is that it is an impermissible way to amend the charter the way that unfortunately we just voted on. More on that on December 4th, obviously. Until then, it'll be difficult to opine furthermore. Additionally, Madam Mayor, we have another matter that there's another case that has come forth. The matter is pending in the circuit court as well. It's Lindsay Banis versus the city of Clawson. That matter, ma'am, is a challenge to an action of the city clerk. The plaintiff in that case sought to have a criminal misdemeanor tossed out of the district court and handled by our zoning board of appeals when the city clerk opined that would be an impermissible action, filed lawsuit currently pending in the circuit court. We received that complaint and summons, and of course we will respond to that as well. I believe the likelihood of success on the merits for the plaintiff in that case is rather low. The criminal misdemeanor that took place, that was the foundation of her request, has already been litigated in our district court. The jail lady has been found guilty, and we believe the success on the merit, therefore, for her is limited, to say the least. And finally, connected with that, I would like to extend my personal gratitude for our Deputy City Clerk, Mrs. Smith, who was one of the witnesses in that case. Additionally, in that matter, we had some subpoenas that went out, Madam Mayor, rather late in the game to a lot of members of our city, of our administration. I know Mr. Raker was subpoenaed, as was Mr. Stepnitz, Mr. Zablocki, and a few others. And the subpoena was improper in many ways, but nonetheless, they took time out of their day and showed up, appeared, were ready and willing to testify, even though they didn't have to, and I thank them sincerely for it. Thank you, ma'am.
Can I ask for clarity on the lawsuit against us about the cannabis?
Yes, ma'am.
Why are they suing us? You said it was a lawsuit against the city.
Yes, ma'am. They're suing us to attempt to prevent our transmittal of the result. In their opinion, right, this, the voters impermissibly voted on the issue.
Okay, and so it's the same people that like litigated that it was not a proper way to make that sort of amendment that followed the suit? Is that?
I believe it's a competitor to the people that presented the charter amendment.
Oh.
So then we may have there might, and the issue may be slightly more complex than I offer it to you at this point, because, for example, we have certain standing issues that the other side has on our case. And it just doesn't make up for the greatest subject matter on a meeting like this, unfortunately.
I just trying to understand, that's all.
Perfect question is just, unfortunately, so to the best that I can explain or understand it, it sounds to me, and I wouldn't know because nobody's told me on the other side as to what their motivation is, but if I had to opine, I would think that they're competitors to the people who put forth the effort behind the charter amendment. And they simply want that charter amendment to fail.
Interesting.
And we're not the only community that's experiencing this. I met with some people the other day that were telling me they experienced the same thing in their community. And if anyone got mail election time, there was a lot of pro-marijuana stuff. There was a lot of against it as well. Those most likely the people, because it was really odd, like, who's sending this stuff? Because, we can't, but I don't know who, it wasn't a Clausen entity that did it. So
To clarify.
Not new to us.
To clarify, pardon me, Madam Mayor, the status of cannabis use in Clausen prior to the passage of the charter amendment was that we had unregulated cannabis use in Clausen, as was stated in the...
If you recall, many moons ago, the city of Clausen opted out of the legislation as the state, when MRTMA passed, gave all the communities an option to either opt in and basically develop and have an ordinance to permit certain uses, shops, so on and so forth, or you could opt out. And at the time, I think I know it was my predecessor that presented before council, and council made the determination to opt out at the time. That remained the fact, obviously, until this voter-initiated charter amendment. Depending on what transpires, and by December 4th, I should be able to let you know, I believe we'll have some guidance or some determination early on that may well tell us where we stand with respect to this. But if what I believe happens, I think nonetheless we may have to thereafter, even if the plaintiffs in the case are successful and the court opines that the way that we attempted to amend our charter in order to allow marijuana was an improper way, and that should properly be an ordinance and not a charter amendment. If that's the ruling, we will be, so to speak, saved from this particular charter amendment. However, the issue will remain, and every 2 years, the same issue can be presented before this city, just in the way that it was presented, but in a ordinance amendment form. So at one point or another, perhaps consideration needs to be given, depending on the outcome, obviously, on December 4th, to presenting or to opining on an ordinance where we may craft once and for all those delineations, similar to this, short-term rental.
So if what you're saying is that they'll present their case, potentially the judge should say, based on the Court of Appeals decision regarding charters, that this is thrown out, would that plaintiff still have an opportunity to sue us because we've already opened the door for changing your charter.
No, and that's what, what we seek to do is simply prevent this from happening. So they may well be successful. If so, charter amendment would be, shut down by that, circuit court judge. There may be additional steps. Obviously, one of the things that could happen that has not happened yet is that the people that were behind the charter amendment, and I would hope that this happens actually, they could intervene in the case. And what they would do is simply give us the ability to litigate this issue once, as opposed to we can litigate this down the road with them as well.
Yeah.
So I know that in my conversation today with the attorney on the plaintiff's side, I made mention exactly of that concern, and I know that they're reaching out to, I put them in touch with the people, or at least with the organization as is listed on some of the paperwork that the citizens received. So hopefully they get in touch with them, and hopefully we litigate this issue once.
Do we know, if I may, there was a survey for Clausen, I think, was, if I'm paraphrasing, there's their title, but they were common behind the other initiatives in Livingston County and Keego Harbor and some of the other communities.
The only thing, and I believe...
They had a post office box here.
Yes.
But that didn't necessarily mean that they were independent of, that somehow they were related, but we don't exactly know.
It was similar, from what we could tell, it was similar. It was a similar attempt.
Okay.
So it was...
So essentially what I'm saying is that they were an outside interested party, rather than having a post office box in Clausen saying that, well, we're a resident, we're concerned about this.
You were probably correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much. City Manager's Report, Mr. Raker.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. On behalf of the entire administration, I want to thank the residents of Clausen for their clear support and understanding of the infrastructure improvement bond. This will be at the top of my workplace items to give thanks for this Thanksgiving. Also, I'd like to read a note that was sent to me, which is a true reflection of this administration and the community working together. This was emailed November 6th of this year, the day after the election. Good morning. In working the Clausen election yesterday, I want to thank you, your staff, police department, and all involved for the magnificent support your community offered. I do not live in Clausen, but do have friends and family that live there and close ties within the city. I can see that the area is a great little town within a diverse city. You can be very proud of the people who work and live there. Have a wonderful day, and again, thank you for your support, Jeff Hall. Mr. Hall worked one of the precincts on Election Day. In addition, I want to give kudos and accolades to the entire city staff for staying focused and objective throughout the months leading up and through the election. Special shout-outs for a job well done to City Clerk Michelle Cuckoo, Deputy City Clerk Vince Smith, and all their election workers for executing a national general election under exceptional scrutiny at a time of fostered skepticism in the democratic process. And metaphorically speaking, game balls go to DPW Assistant Superintendent Ryan McDonald and Development and Communications Specialist Brandon Birch. Your communications to the Infrastructure Improvement Bond ballot proposal information, access, and awareness efforts were the mainstay of our collective success. Thank you all. Moving forward with the progress on the bonds, Finance Director Mark Pollock and I are in the midst of setting up a meeting with PFM to establish a rough timeline for sequencing events in support of a bond sale. We're forecasting the sale for late winter, early spring in anticipation of capitalizing on the 2025 construction season. Pending the findings from the CCTV and cleaning of the sewer system citywide, we intend to start construction on Elmwood from Crooks to Selfridge as early as possible in the construction season. CCTV televising and cleaning will begin the first or second week in December, and the crews can work continuously as long as the temperature is above 18 degrees. The administration will transform the infrastructure section of the website to provide updates and forecasts on infrastructure improvement for continued public awareness and access to this information. As a reminder, lease season continues through Thursday, December 5th, and yard waste will stop picking up for the winter on Wednesday, December 11th. Pending your question, that's my brief.
Are you going to stick by those dates for leaf pickup? Because Pastor Trexel has a lot of leaves that always come down late, and he's going to ask for an exception. Am I wrong? Yeah, I'm wrong. I'm kidding.
There are certain things of nature that we'll work with and work with the community.
Any questions or concerns? Okay, let's do council comments. Mr. Pinkowski.
Got a few things. First, tonight, now that the infrastructure bond is passed, I hope this council might be amicable to looking at it to our engineering contracts and whether or not every single engineering project needs to be given to one firm. I think it might be advantageous to look at competitive bidding of some of the engineering work before we get too deep into this. Number two, wanted to talk about the ordinance text amendment that I moved that did not receive support. What this was is our planned unit development, our PUD ordinance, right now already allows multiple family and single family attached residential uses to be approved by the PUD process. What we did was say, no, we won't look at single family housing, single family detached housing. So it is possible for the developer to come back with single family attached housing or multiple family housing as a PUD use. I really supported this because the school district supports it, because they want to make sure they get top dollar for that shown property. And they want top dollar so they can pay their teachers and they can buy equipment and pay for their, and finish off paying for their school repairs and so forth. So actually voting against this would be a, kind of a kick in the face to the school district and their plan. Plus, it limits the school district and the city's overall tax collection of properties in the future, which makes the rest of our residents pay a little more. And third, I want to congratulate Mayor Milan on her successful takeover of the Downtown Development Authority. It's a very savvy political move. She's worked over the last year to take people off and put her people on. And last month they voted to oust the longtime DDA chairperson, Mary Liz Curtin, who owns 3 Cats, and Leanna Lulu, some of the most successful businesses in town. So I wanted to congratulate her on that. And also, new news today, they managed to also oust Joan Horton, who's the DDA director. Here's her letter of resignation today. It is with great sadness, but with joy for the future, that I am submitting my resignation as the executive director of the Clausen DDA, effective immediately. I have recently learned that the city manager does not believe the management of the Downtown Development Authority can be effectively managed by city administration without a dedicated director. As there will not be a training and transition period for a new executive director, I am able to move my planned retirement forward. I've enjoyed building and leading this organization in the past 17 years, having a hand in the positive changes and growth in our downtown, and the privilege of working and forging friendships with so many small business owners and volunteers. And I would like to thank Joan and Mary Liz for their dedicated to service in transforming the downtown of Clausen over the past 15 or so years.
Thank you, Mr. Binkowski. Ms. Moffitt?
I have nothing.
Councilmember Shepherd?
Again, I want to mention to the Planning Commission of what they've had on their plate recently. It's been a hard task. It's been difficult, but I think you've been able to, present something that we can at least look at and continue the conversation. And I appreciate what you presented to us regarding the PUD. My concern about the use of PUDs is that we continually have them come in front of us, and instead of using the ordinances that we have, that in order to use a PUD to surpass those ordinances, that we're using a PUD to circumvent and provide that something that's lesser than what we expect. And I'm getting tired of it. I want to see something a little bit better than that. They have their place, I get it, but I was served on Planning Commission for 10 years, and I've never seen this many PUDs presented to us. So anything that comes in front of us, unless it's something that's unbelievable, that we have clearly stated what the benefits are to our community and not site-specific, then fine, let's take a look at that. But I'm getting a little tired of it.
And I'd like to just add on to that by saying, Clawson is at a really unique point in time right now. We're extremely desirable to outside sources. We have some great things coming up. We have the opportunity for great things. And if we don't manage our resources, if we don't protect our limited resources, we can make some big mistakes for the future. And I have every belief that everyone that's involved is trying to do a really great thing, but let's slow down a little bit. Let's listen to people, let's listen to each other, and let's see what this community really wants to build towards, as opposed to just taking something and running with it. Because with all due respect, Mr. Binkowski, it is not the school district's responsibility to develop that property. They can sell that property. That's their job. The development portion of it and the guidance of that belongs within the city scope, and we have to protect ourselves. Of course, we'll take additional housing. Any additional housing we get there is going to be additional revenue, and of course, we will all appreciate that. But allowing an outside entity to determine anything that is of a scope within the city of Clawson, administrative function, is wrong, and we shouldn't do it for this topic or for any other. I'd also like to say a big thank you to Clawson Manor. Last Friday, they had an open house. As many of you know, they've had a development project for the last couple of years. They did a total renovation on the inside. They also did a beautiful renovation on the outside. So if you live there, they've created a much greater quiet, safe space for their people. It's beautiful. And had added some additional amenities to kind of create a community within our community. I want to give a shout out to Diane Smith, who is our zoning chairperson. She and her husband and family have lived here for a long time. She works for CSI, the company that purchased Clawson Manor a while back, and they did an exceptional job, and they had a really phenomenal program that included most of our state representatives, top down, and then either one of them or persons representing them, and also members of HUD, the people who came into finance. And it was a perfect picture of how all these different entities come together to create something good and beneficial. And I loved seeing it. It was just kind of inspiring. And one other thing about them, they received a Vanguard Award, which may not seem like anything to you, but a Vanguard Award is a huge honor for development. And when they were talking about it, I was just thinking how great Clawson is in our 2.2 miles, that we have James Beard people, we have people on all kinds of like really nationally acclaimed things. You know, we have a lot of great things going on here. We need to protect what we have and then appreciate what is going on here as well. I'd also like to give a thank you to Mr. Raker. You thanked everyone else regarding the bond proposal. Residents, you guys came like you always do. We will not disappoint you. We are going to fix these things. I know every person sitting here probably came during the campaign, their very first campaign, saying, we want to help you fix the roads. We want to fix the roads. Wasn't really fun to come and say, hey, you want to give us some millions of dollars for, a pretty long term of time when you just gave the school district a lot of money for a long term of time, but we have to invest in ourselves, and I just applaud you for doing that, and to the great team that made it happen, including this council who voted for it to move it forward, and for the dollar amount. Like, we had conversations where people wanted to go lower. I'm really glad we went higher so we can actually address some things and move forward and show the residents what we're doing. And then, Mr. Binkowski, I don't even know you. I've sat with you. I hear things about you all the time. The one thing I will say I do know about you, though, is that truth is not something you are overly concerned with. The message that you shared this evening is wrong. I don't have people, although I have people that I treasure, and if you're in this room, I treasure you. I have not assembled a group to do anything other than perform well on behalf of this community. And I am extremely proud of the group that I have encouraged, talked with, brought together to work for our DDA. You should be ashamed of yourself for even implying that there is some kind of nefarious behavior for any of these things. Nobody was pushed out. I did not nominate myself for a position. You can look at me all you want, because I get it. I get it. But to those of you who showed up tonight from the DDA, thank you. I appreciate you so much. Nobody pushed anybody out of anything. I are not managing a coup. I can tell you from my standpoint, I joined city council to try and do good. I'm part of the DDA because it's part of my job being on city as the mayor. There are some serious problems within our DDA that we can fix. We can make things better, and people can still participate, and they can help to make things better. And for you to disparage anyone, come after me all you want. You come after me day and night. Keep writing stuff online. It's all lies. Nobody cares what you say. Nobody believes you. But the people who work hard for this community, whether they are paid participants or they're volunteering their time, you have no right to talk about. So I would like to end my tongue with that. If you volunteer here, if you showed up tonight, you were participating in democracy. Thank you. Thank you for being honorable. Thank you for being honest. And thank you for giving your time. And I will call for a motion to dismiss.
Motion to adjourn.
Support. Roll call, please.
Mayor Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Binkowski,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moffett,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
My second bourbon.